Had some technical difficulties there in this show intro. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Talking Cinema. We are your hosts, Julius Freeman, Sean Malone, and James Callahan. Welcome back, guys. How was your 2 week? How was your last 2 weeks since the last time we did the show for Silence, starring directed by Martin Scorsese? How was you guys' time off? Good.
Good 2 weeks. Missed the show.
It was good. I went to the Grand Canyon and shot a short film, so I had fun.
Wow.
Very
incredible.
Cool. So today's show is Network, directed by Sidney Lumet, written by Patty Chayefsky, starring William Holden, Faye Dunaway, Robert Duvall, and who was the fourth? Peter Finch. Right, Peter Finch. So this was the movie that I chose. It's one of my favorite films of all time. There's few movies in my life anyway. I can't speak for everyone, but there's movies that I call, good entertainment movies that change your lives, like Star Wars, for instance, or Back to the Future. But there's few movies that really change your life, like kind of make you view the world in a different light than you did before you watched something or got exposed to something. And, a few movies like, for me, Citizen Kane, Goodfellas come to mind, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then Network. Network, I first watched it when I was about 24, I want to say. It was midnight. I was looking for something to watch, and I was, checking out my satellite, TV channels to kind of find for something, and I hit Turner Classic Movies, and it was right at the moment when Howard Beale shows up and he starts the show, and that was it. I was hooked after that. And it really did change me. Like it was a movie that really changed my life in a lot of ways, because it opened a lot of avenues to, well, we'll talk about it later in the show, but of the realities of like big business, the realities of how television does bastardize almost everything that touches. It kills almost everything that touches. It also exposed me to great acting, great writing, and great directing. It's a full package. The movie was a full package for me. So it's a multi-layered, multi-themed, just absolutely fantastic. Let's start with you, James. What were your first thoughts when you first watched Network? For the first time, and then also upon viewing it again recently for the show, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind? What did you think overall of the film?
Well, what's up, Ferris? My first experience seeing the movie was much like yours, age-wise. I think I was in my early 20s, and I was really anticipating to watching this film, and I think that I watched it when it came out on DVD, and so like I was all pumped to watch it. And I gotta be honest, I didn't like the movie the first time I saw it. I thought there was something about the film that was like tonally off. I thought that the filmmaking was kind of incongruous to the script, and I felt like the script was very pleased with itself and so cynical that I just could not get into it, and I just couldn't understand why the film was so revered. And I kind of had that take on that movie for a solid 10 years. And I just happened to actually rewatch the movie a year ago, and I was like, oh, I'm stupid. This movie's brilliant. And I don't know, maybe I was actually like slightly jealous that a writer was capable of writing a script so absolutely brilliant and so funny. Every line of dialogue, I actually think this is on a short list of one of the best written films ever made. It has one of those scripts. Like I was trying to like write down some of my favorite lines until I realized like the entire script is my favorite line. Like it's all good lines. Like it's this movie has so much going for it. You said full package. This is my favorite kind of movie where you have all of the elements in place that are working in the service of a great script. You have a great director, great producers, a great cinematographer, and editing, and then you just have like a cast that is to die for. Everyone at the top of their game, including Peter Finch, who basically like goes out on the biggest high. Like it's unfortunate that he passed away before he got to collect his Oscar, but yeah. I mean, what a final performance! What a defining performance! Yeah, I love this movie, and this was actually my third time watching it. And I think this would be, I would consider this to be one of my all-time favorite movies now. It's one of the few times I've done a full reversal on a movie, went from just like, whatever, to being like, oh, this is one of the greats. So yeah, moral of the story is I was very stupid when I was in my 20s. So.
Sean, your thoughts upon watching the movie for the first time and how it has affected you as a filmmaker, since I know you're a cinematographer yourself. When was the first time you've seen this film, and upon watching it again for the show, what were your thoughts watching it with fresh eyes?
Like a lot of cinema in the 70s, I had a vague memory of seeing this film, but upon watching it this time, I realized I never had seen the whole thing. I went over to a friend's house or a classmate's house when I was in studying film in college, and he had it on in the background, and we were cutting. It was actually a film class. So we were cutting literal film, 16 millimeter film. And so I was like listening to the movie while I was cutting our little film. But I virtually absorbed hardly any of it, because when I watched it this time, I realized like all my it's funny. I mentioned my brother watched the movie with me, and I mentioned to him, all my presuppositions about the movie were like correct and incorrect at the same time. Like it was the type of movie I thought it would be. And yet there's things about it that I assumed that the part where he says he wants everyone to go to the window and yell, like I thought that would probably be like the climax of the movie, right? Or that everybody going to the window and yelling would be like sort of this mass event. And then it would like, I don't know, it would cause like chaos in the streets or something like that. But it kind of happened like, I don't know, maybe in the middle of the movie, early middle of the movie. And of course it was only one of his like mini diatribes that he did on air. So my impressions of this time, which was really my first time watching it, were, I can see why it's highly regarded. I can see why it's referenced. I can see why it defined a generation. There's a different generation of filmmakers and moviegoers, and who reference that movie a lot. We'll have a lot of time to talk tonight about what we did and didn't like about the movie, but I guess I'll summarize by saying I loved Peter Finch's performance. I found it hilarious, especially the last time he faints on the air. It just cracked me up so much. And yet his character too is like so, like he really is going mad. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of ways you can interpret it, but that scene where he goes into the CEO's office and the CEO kind of puts on the prophet act to kind of convince him, that he needs to be saying the opposite of what he's been saying about corporations and about the merger and all that stuff, or the acquisition. That part to me, that it kept going from that wide or that medium wide of the CEO across the table, and he's, it's just such an epic shot, and he's sort of wielding the power of that conference table, and then it cuts into Peter Finch's close-up just like this, and he's like, like a shot of his face where he's just like,
which is kind of which was also the kind of like the parallel of what happened in that first scene when he hears the voice. He's like, oh, please listen, harder. So it's kind of like it's the same kind of parallel, but it's perverted in that second scene with Jensen, William Jensen. I think.
Absolutely. And that was odd because the whole time you're trying to figure out, like, at first you're like, is he a prophet? Is God speaking to him? And then he actually explicitly says that the voice wasn't God, and then the CEO ends up telling him exactly the same thing that the voice told him. Yeah. I think because he says it on the air and the CEO is like manipulating him, but yeah, dude, and it is really cynical movie. Like I watched this movie and I kind of thanked God that there's at least a movie from the 70s, All the President's Men, where like some characters are like kind of heroic and like honorable, because this movie really made me reflect on the 70s cinema I'm familiar with and go, in the 70s, like people really had lost. I wasn't alive then, but it was like, we know from history, people had lost faith in government and they had lost faith in society. And it was like a cynical time. And this movie is definitely a reflection of that. So lots to talk about here. But yeah, that's my intro statement.
Yeah, lots and lots to unpack here with this film, because it's so rich. It's so rich with almost like every thematic sense of the word. Where the characters are well developed, the story is solid, the acting is superb, and for me, the film left a tremendous impact on me due to the fact that Paddy Chayefsky, the screenwriter of the film. It's funny because when I was watching the film last night and they showed the intro, right, and they have network, and then the second title is by Paddy Chayefsky, which I found it interesting. I was like, wow, like that's how powerful, that's how heavy his work is. Like, it's so heavy that they couldn't even say, directed by Sidney Lumet. It's straight up just Paddy Chayefsky's network,
right?
Because of his idea and his vision. And Paddy Chayefsky, for those of you who don't know, he was one of the I don't want to say founders, but he was the first wave, the first generation of television writers when television was new. So it was Rod Serling and it was Paddy Chayefsky and a few other writers. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but Rod Serling has gone on record saying that Paddy Chayefsky was the one who kind of legitimized television. If it wasn't for Paddy Chayefsky, television would have just been nothing but circus and clowns and whatnot. And Paddy Chayefsky really brought that hefty drama element to television, which still resonates today with all the dramas that we have on television these days. And so he's been around the block for a while. So at this point in his career, he was already like the king of screenwriters or playwrights. And so the fact that he was able to produce this, write the screenplay, took him a year to develop this screenplay.
I'm surprised it didn't take him longer.
Well, I guess technically it took him 2 years or a year. Yeah, like you said, like it because he had to work with the actors, and I think upon working with the actors, he changed a little bit of the screenplay as they produced it. But I think that's my understanding of it, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it took him a year. Well, I'm not surprised a year because a guy at that point, at that level, it would take him about a year, especially with his level of intellect that he had at that point in his life.
Yeah, it just seems that from what I read, it seems like he spent a lot of time in at actual television networks and sitting in board meetings and kind of studying the room and the jargon and the lingo and kind of the characters and that like built into this script. And I don't know, it's just like every line of dialogue in this movie does not feel like, he just half-assed it. Like, it's so much of it has so much experience built into it. And just the level of wit, the references, the payoffs, the rhythm of the dialogue, it's just one of those things where it's like, I can't think of a lot of scripts that are quite as great as this one. But I know that he was a celebrated writer, and I think this was the film he won his third Oscar for. So in addition to being a prominent television writer and stage writer, like this guy, he won an Oscar for writing Marty, and I think the George C. Scott film, The Hospital. I haven't seen either movie.
Which was also a great film too.
I've never seen it, and I need to watch it because this guy I think is like right up my alley. I think the only other film by him that I've seen is his film Altered States, which I thought was strange, but I think he wrote that when he was dying. But this movie is I want to own the script. Like, I just want to read through it because there's just so much in it, so rich.
I'll say that was piggybacking off of what James said. That was one of the things I didn't care for in the movie, which is I liked every part of the movie except the love story or the non-love story between William Holden and Faye.
Yeah, I can see that.
And all the dialogue too, like those were the moments when I really noticed the dialogue just being really heavy-handed, and I turned to my brother and said, "Nobody talks like this. Like, this is
sure.
It's a screenwriter's wet dream. This script is, but the dialogue sounded, and it's funny too because like William Holden, I've seen several of his movies, and he has a similar he had a lot of like soliloquy monologues and sort of like these judgy, like, your generation. And, he's that scene where he's like just totally like coming down on her and saying like, you're pathetic and you can't feel anything. I'm paraphrasing. But like, it reminded me of speeches he has in Sunset Boulevard. And it's actually, he kind of has similar, I think he may have been chosen for this role, if I had to guess, in part because of Sunset Boulevard and like who could pull off these long sort of judgy monologues. And it's like, well, William Holden did it in Sunset Boulevard. Let's get him. But I feel like that as an actor, I don't think that's his strength. I think my favorite performance of his is Bridge on the River Kwai, where he plays kind of like a cynical playboy. And I think that fits his demeanor and his screen presence a lot better than these type of characters.
He plays a cynical playboy in the film where he's a POW in a Japanese camp. Like,
yeah, no. Well, yes, because in the beginning of the film, they established that he's sort of like, he's just having fun with this girlfriend of his, and he doesn't want to be part of the war. And he's a cynical play. He really is, his character.
It's been a number of years since I've seen the film, but I did love it when I was a kid. Got to rewatch that one. I haven't seen him in a lot of films, but he's made an impression on the films I've seen. Like The Wild Bunch is like the first one that comes to mind. And I think, and of course, Sunset Boulevard, for example. It's weird. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, those were the only moments like where I was watching his long monologues where I'm kind of like, I was just thinking like, here is an actor, sort of giving memorized lines is the feeling I get during those moments in this movie. But go ahead, James, you were about to say.
No, you know what? It's interesting because I do like. It's funny because while I didn't like the film very much the first time I watched it, I distinctly remember the experience of watching it. And when I watched it a second time, like within the last year, I could remember beats through the movie where I remembered my reaction at the time and how I just felt differently now. One of the scenes I really disliked was the context of the mad as hell speech. And the people shouting from the windows. I was just like, this is so on the nose and so ridiculous. But I didn't realize that like within the framework of the script, within, the rules of that world, like it actually works and it makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But with the William Holden character, I really think by the end of the film, he's the only one that gets out clean with his humanity. And it's very funny, like the one moment where Faye Dunaway shows any level of humanity is when she's on the verge of tears in that scene. And then it immediately cuts to her deciding that they need to kill Howard Beale. And I don't know, she's basically playing the shark from Jaws through the entire movie, but just like in that one scene, she shows some level of humanity, and then it's gone in a moment with him when he walks out the door.
That was one thing I liked about their love story, and I think it was the point of their love story, which is to say, like, the scene when like they're on the date and then they get home and then they go inside and like they're kind of heading towards the bedroom, and the whole scene, like, it's all these like moments that you'd find in a Woody Allen movie, right? She's laughing, they're having a fun time, they're in love, but like all she's saying is like TV business.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
All of her dialogue there. Yeah. So I thought that was really brilliant. But I could have done with a little less of their little story.
I disagree with that because you needed that for the scene that came right after that, which was him telling his wife about the affair. And that I that's one of my favorite my favorite cuts in film is seeing this long, not long, but this scene, this long montage of them on their date on the beachfront and having their moment together, and then it cuts to the face of the wife of that dreaded like again, that face was like, again, you're having another affair now at this stage in our lives, seriously. And that whole scene, man, that whole scene, like I remember when I first watched the movie, that scene was the one that impressed me the most. of the whole entire film. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was impressed with everyone else's performances, but I think the actress name is Beatrice.
Beatrice Straight.
Right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, she really like that was the most powerful scene for me. It was like, oh man, this woman is really like showing us her pain and her grace as well, when she's still able to laugh at his jokes and actually ask him, does she love you? Like, does she love you, Max? You know, and
She straight up calls him out. It's a brilliant scene. It's actually the scene that feels the most real and raw, and like he just like got hit by like reality and the consequences of his decision. It's interesting too, because she won an Oscar for that movie, and to this day I believe it's the smallest amount of screen time that an actor has won an Oscar for. And it's crazy. Like, I mean, she absolutely deserved it. I think she's only in the movie for about 5 minutes. It's interesting too, because Ned Beatty, the guy who plays Mr. Arthur, he also got nominated for his one scene, and I mean, absolutely deserved it. He killed that scene. He's incredible in it. So
they play a character actor, and he just came in there and did his thing, and see you later. And you're right, James. His performance was also very powerful and scary at the same time. Scary, because I remember the first time when I watched the film and he said all those things about there's only Exxon, ITT, AT&T. These are the nations of the world today, and the world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime, and all this stuff where I was like, oh my God, dude, this guy, because I was really deep into the conspiracy theory stuff at this point in my life. So when I watched this film, it was like, oh my God, they knew it back in the 70s as well. Like, oh no, we're doomed.
That's so funny, because my reaction back then was like I don't know, it just felt so indulgent, like the jerk off emoji. Like I was just like, all right, yeah, okay, fine, like I get it, but watching it now, I was like, this is really crazy, like how prophetic this is, because this is basically planting the seeds for the world that we live in now, and the kind of like media culture that we live in now. And I mean, I remember at the time, whenever Beale would mention the tube on his show, his like variety show, I would think like, God, that sounds so dated and ridiculous. But like, I mean, smartphones didn't exist back then, and they do now. And it's like, if you substitute tube for phone or smartphone, like he's describing the world that we live in right now.
Or YouTube.
Well, yeah.
I'm mad at myself for not making that connection, honestly. But yeah.
Yes, and also, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I had that thought right in the top of my head. Oh, the cable news.
Absolutely.
Cable news,
the state of cable news, because at this time, like, maybe they could read the tea leaves and see where maybe things were going in the future, but it was nothing like, and to my knowledge, what I know about this period of time, it was nothing like what we have today, which is this 24-hour news cycle, entire channel devoted to only commentary, only sort of people ranting and raving all the time,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I actually
that was where it was going to be headed anyway, because there's a great line in the movie when Diane, played by Faye Dunaway, it goes into William Holden's office, remember, and she's it's like a gesture of goodwill that she was doing for I'm going to take your show, but I'm going to be nice. I want to be nice about it. And that line, I think she said, was TV is show business.
Yeah.
And it's like, yep, that's exactly what happened. It's like, you're on TV, you're show business. We got to be show business. And William Holden was the encapsulation of the Walter Cronkites and the Edward Murrow, I believe his name was.
Yeah.
The not, I don't want to say boring, because it wasn't boring, but the informative, the objective presentation of news, where they just present you the facts. And then that slowly was dying out, because as William Hackett's character, played by gosh, I always forget his name. What? Robert
Duvall. Yeah.
We'll talk about his character in a minute. When he just wanted to just cut that news out of CCA, because it was draining the funds from CCA, because it wasn't getting, they weren't generating revenue. And It's just a sad. It's a like you said earlier about being cynical. It is very sad to see that we can't have news that just objectively just presents the facts, or information, and you can make it out however you will. But now it's all skewed and biased, and it's kind of developed a sense of disunity amongst the populace of America, which is that's, I think that's what this movie was pretty much predicting.
And it's kind of about how much it feeds on the public's anger and how it like really drives that anger. And I mean, when I first saw this movie, like I didn't connect with that at all, but like, I mean, there are so many times where I stare at social media and I get angry, and it's like, it's built to do that, and exactly. Cable news is built to do that. And it's amazing. A lot of the things I was reading from Chayefsky was saying that like he was getting this feeling when he was studying television and watching shows and being in these network meetings that like that was kind of their brand, was like they didn't want to give people a happy ending. They wanted to make people angry because, angry people are passionate people, and they will watch their TV and they will tune in to get angry. Also, my understanding too is that at the time, and they have those beautiful like opening shots of like the ABC building and CBS and NBC. I guess there wasn't a fourth major network at the time. And I guess like maybe a decade later or whatever, Fox was introduced as kind of that sensationalized, fourth network. Right. And of course it's exploded to like a million different, cable TV shows and stuff now, networks now, but
which is very interesting because Fox, not Fox News, but Fox, the network, they didn't have news, right? Like ABC, CBS, NBC, they all had a news division, and Fox didn't even mess with that because they were just.
well, Fox was a Rupert Murdoch company, right? From the get-go.
I don't know what their ownership was back then, but
I think they did have news, but like they did sensationalize their news. I think they were the ones that introduced like cops and reality TV and stuff.
That's right.
They had local news,
they had local news. Yeah, you're right.
The local Fox affiliates had a local news, but they didn't have a national news division like the
Okay.
Yeah, not until I think the early 2000s. I think that's when they started the Fox News to compete with CNN and MSNBC. And all that.
But then that was its whole own network.
Right.
And so it's like opposite problems, right? Like no news versus like very commentatory, heavy news channel.
Yeah.
But
one of the biggest takeaways I've had with this movie upon watching it again was how television executives, and like you see this picture here, the higher ups, the stockholders, the board, and all that stuff, and how it was brilliant to see how Peter was able to see how these executives were able to get a fad, because Howard Beale was a fad. He did his thing. I'm gonna kill myself on live television. And of course, it shocked everyone. It's like, did you just hear Howard Beale? He's just gonna kill himself on live TV next week. And then it got some recognition that's in today's terms is called going viral. And then Diana, Faye Dunaway's character, wants to jump on it because she realizes this is what the American people are feeling right now. They're angry and they want someone to vent their anger for them. And so there's a little bit of resistance, and it fails a little bit because they try to control it. But then when they allow it to flourish naturally again, that's when it becomes a big sensation. And like every other thing, like in today's time, especially in television, when something goes big or viral, they take it, they package it, and they sell it to you. And that's what happened with Howard Beale's character. But then the moment it reaches its peak of its popularity, what happens when he gets too popular? He speaks truth to power. And what happened after that? The corporation's like, no. We gotta talk you down. Because what happens when someone gets so big and they start speaking truth to power, they get silenced. And that's what happened in this movie too, except like you mentioned earlier, the William Jensen character manipulated Howard Beale to make sure he steers off that course and doesn't do what he did in that second episode that we see in the movie, which was him talking about the Saudis buying up all these companies and getting people mad that America was selling out to the Arabs. And it turns out that you find out that this big American conglomerate is actually dealing with the Saudis, and they don't want the deal to go down because of a TV host. And that was one of my biggest takeaways watching it again, was just like, wow, this Patty Chayefsky was able to capture this. That it happens to this day. Today when you see things that go viral, a lot of the time, like YouTubers, social media influencers on Instagram and Twitter and what have you, sometimes they get so big that they end up having their own TV shows, and then they're not the same when they first became popular, because now they're confined to the box, as the term is known online.
Yeah.
That scene with my favorite scene probably in the entire movie is that scene with Jensen. Just the beginning where he just screams at him, "You have meddled with the primal forces of nature," is so funny. And his monologue is like, I swear this monologue works today. Aside from some of the companies that like are no longer around, but like, everything he is saying is just like, this is the world that we live in now. It is a global, basically a large global company, and like everyone plays their part, everyone turns a profit. And if you go out there and try to speak truth to power, you're going to break that system, and you need to be re-educated. And he does it in this very like a very kind of like sinister 1984, but like in a very satirical way, in the way he's just like, okay, I'm gonna restructure your brain and send you back out there and have you say exactly what I need you to say.
I feel like he does it in the only way in which Howard Beale would have been persuaded or would have listened to him, which is to speak in the same voice, basically, that Howard Beale was speaking in, which is, the kind of fire and brimstone, voice that he has. But can I mention? I want to mention two things. One, how hilarious it was when they, sort of landed on the final format for Howard Beale's show. and he had it was like a game show, it was so sensationalized. You had the spinning like set pieces and the blaring
Sybil the Soothsayer.
Vox
Populi.
And then I want to mention too, the People's Liberation Army, the Communist Liberation Army.
Oh my gosh! How could we forget?
What are they called?
Like that
the Ecumenical Liberation Front.
That's right. That woman who they go to talk to try to be their liaison between terrorists and yes, this woman, and she is so like in tune with all the business inner workings of television, and like it's kind of like the Faye Dunaway dialogue, right, when they're having their romantic moments, but she's spurting is this woman speaks like a revolutionary, like a leftist revolutionary, but she's talking about points on the back end.
Right.
That to me was brilliant. And
don't mess with my distribution cost.
And this guy too, when he fires the gun,
man, give her the oversight.
Yeah.
Which, really quick, by the way, did you guys recognize in the background the guy in the blue suit is Lance Henriksen?
Yes.
What's his name from Aliens? Man, I can't believe I forgot his name.
What's the character's name?
Bishop.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I didn't see that. I didn't notice that.
And I also love the fact that Patty Chayefsky was also so self-aware, not just self-aware, but aware of the hypocrisy. Here, if you look at this picture, look who she's surrounded with. She's surrounded by white lawyers, a leftist, communist, full on, soldier of the communist movement, and she has white capitalistic imperialist lawyers making sure that they negotiate a great deal for herself and the what's his name, Khan?
Right? And all her stuff too at the beginning, where she's like, "Oh, they're a terrorist organization that uses violence, and our group would have nothing to do with their group." And and then you find out like moments later, it's just posturing.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
She's very close with them. Very cynical.
It's funny. You reminded me of a couple of things I read about, like Sidney Lumet's approach to the making of the film, and I read about this and I thought it was pretty brilliant. his approach in some ways. Like the music that keeps coming up, apparently all of the music was made up of like TV shows and commercials. Like there's no like actual music in the movie aside from that. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting was that as the movie begins, he wanted to shoot the film in a very like naturalistic kind of documentary style. And I remember thinking in the scene, which is like really funny, where Max and Howard go get drunk and he tells his George Washington Bridge story, which is like pretty great. But it's very grainy, and it has a kind of documentary feel to it. But he said that like over the course of the movie, he wanted to introduce more lights and more slick camera moves, so that by the end it has this just very like artificial, kind of like slickly produced, kind of like TV feel to it. And that's kind of like the sort of the visual arc of the film. And that really made me appreciate the movie a lot more, because it's very evident, like just thinking back on it, like, oh yeah, that is very true. It becomes like overly produced by the end.
Yeah. And I love this is kind of, I think this is a scene where he faints. I love that. But when he gets shot, after they decide we're going to kill him, and then he gets shot. And I love what the cameraman immediately move in for the close up. They knew exactly what was going to happen. It was all orchestrated. Like, it's clear they're in on it too,
and it, again, once again, parallels to what he said in this scene here, when he says, we'll tell you whatever you want to hear, and we lie like hell. We deal in illusions. That's what the line was. We deal in illusions. None of it is true.
And of course, it's so ironic because here he is on this super overly produced show telling people to turn their sets off. And, and then again, this movie didn't go anywhere I thought it would go. When he said, turn your sets off, I thought, okay, now they're all going to turn their sets off and they're going to be mad at Howard Beale. But like none of that happened. It's just like, no, they're not going to turn their sets off. They're just going to keep going to the TV and fulfilling his prophecy of like looking to it to tell them how to live their lives.
And also found it interesting that he laid almost Christ-like, like in the cross.
Oh, yeah.
If you notice here,
the
leg and him out and here on the floor. I was just like, again, upon watching with fresh eyes, it's just like there's so much symbolism here that I missed the previous times that I've seen the film. But this time I saw it, I was like, okay, wow, this is an interesting camera angle that Sidney Lumet chose to do when after this famous monologue scene.
It's like
all this Christ imagery. What is this? A Zack Snyder film?
Well, it's interesting because Padashevsky, I think, was Jewish, so I don't think.
No,
I don't know why he would choose.
Sidney Lumet was Jewish too, so I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. Jewish people love Christ imagery.
I mean, who doesn't? I love it.
No, I was going to say,
especially in Zack Snyder films.
Especially Zack Snyder films.
Maybe it was Bryan Singer.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, he also loves it.
But yeah, he also has that like the backdrop that looks like like the glass of like a church in the background when his show opens.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And she keeps referring to him as like a messianic figure in like a kind of flippant way. Like, they don't usually come in bunches. You only get, one of these every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, even that shot that Julius just showed, it almost looks like the shot in a movie about Jesus where like they've lowered the cross, and then you have the gallery, everyone looking at him. It's very layered.
It is. Very layered.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that they just basically like exploit this guy who's clearly going through a crisis, a mental crisis, that they can't control him, and they're basically giving him a forum to say whatever he wants. And they're just going along with it, like you mentioned, with the the very quick push in. Like this has all been orchestrated. They know exactly when to do it. It's like they're like exploiting this person who is clearly going through something that he needs help, and they're just like, no, this guy's turning a profit. Our numbers are going up, and we're going to squeeze everything we can out of him, and
we got a
then we'll shoot him.
Yeah, exactly. Share. Dang it! No, we can't let him go. It's a big titted, big fat hit.
And Robert Duvall plays such a great like
Robert
villain.
Duvall
He is so good in this movie, and I love that when he fires Max, it is such a great scene.
Man.
Like he's just like he's been waiting for this moment. He hates the news. The news loses money. If you're a corporate guy, you walk into a network and you're like, why do we even have this division? It's losing money. Because you don't understand like what this whole, what this culture of television is supposed to be. Like it's supposed to be like a place to, in addition to entertaining people, but also have aspects to it from what I understand. Like, all news organizations lost money, but they did it as a public service. Right. And if you're, if you get gobbled up by a big, corporate, company that just kind of folds you in, they're going to look at you and go, wait, you're losing us money. That's not making our shareholders happy. We need to cut you out and, exploit this thing. Yeah, look at him. He looks ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, he was, man, talk about someone who is aware of what he wants and what he wants to do and has no problem stepping on anyone's face, getting to the top. And Fred Hackett, which is a great name, by the way, character name, Hackett.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never seen Robert Duvall. As growing up, I've always seen Robert Duvall's films as like, oh, the nice old man, the nice old man character that always comes out in those movies. He plays the nice old man, the grandfather, the father figure, that kind of deal. And so this was the first time I ever seen Robert Duvall in a role like this, where I was like, oh my God, dude, this guy is freaking, his range is unbelievable. The fact that he was able to convince me that he could play this cold-hearted corporate man through and through, doesn't care if anyone likes him. And just like that scene when when William Holden character asked Diana, I'm here, there's a rumor mill going around that you are Fred Hackett's, call girl. And she just straight up like laughs and says, no, I'm not even a stockholder. So why would he even bother with me? Because he's
right.
He's a corporate man through and through, body and soul. And, when you see him act like a worm is the moment when he sees the Beale episode where he talks about the CCA deal with the Saudis, and he's like freaking out and he's pacing back and forth like, I'm gonna kill him, I'm gonna kill this guy for ruining. Now I'm not gonna have a corporation. He's like rubbing his head, he's like freaking out that Jensen's gonna eat him up alive. And it's just did he get an Academy Award for this or not? He got a nomination.
He didn't get nominated for it.
No, he didn't. Oh, what a shame.
And this is a movie that got 5 actor nominations, which is like kind of unheard of. And like Robert Duvall was the odd man out. He was the one that didn't get in. It's very very interesting.
Very interesting. Very actually tragic in a lot of ways, because he was fantastic in this film.
He is great, and he doesn't play a lot of, like you said, he plays likable characters in those movies. Like even in The Godfather, like Tom Hagen's he's a nice,
he's likable.
He's a likable character. But yeah, like I really love that scene where he panics. He kind of shows his humanity for a second, and he's like, oh my God, I'm finished. And it's like, it's that moment where he like realized like, oh, I let this thing really get out of hand. I lost control of this guy. And then it ends up like turning out to be kind of a win, because like he goes to see Jensen, and Jensen's like, no, I'm going to re-educate you and to, get you out there to do, exactly what I want you to do, and
I also found it interesting too, that when it started losing ratings, Jensen wanted him on the air. He didn't care that he was costing the company millions of dollars anymore, because I'm going to go down a little conspiratorial road here for a second. In some of my research it is known amongst the elite circles that they are considered to be master psychologists. They know exactly how to pull the strings of they know how to pull the strings of the human behavior. So if they want to do something or change anything, they can easily cause an event that sorry, my little girl's you're trying to get my attention. It's okay.
Well, I mean,
hold on, let me finish my thought.
Yeah.
So, Jensen's character, because I'm pretty sure Padashevsky probably met some of these Rockefeller types at one point in his life, and probably sat down and spoke to one of them during a dinner and went, "What the hell, dude? That's how you view the world? Really? Oh crap! Holy crap! We're in trouble." And so Jensen's I found it interesting that Jensen allowed Beale to continue spewing that poison to break the spirit, because that's what it was. That's essentially what it was. He re-educated him to make sure that, okay, instead of you empowering the spirit, the fighting spirit of the American way, I'm gonna re-educate you to make sure you break it and keep it docile, because I want this, because the agenda, as according to the conspiracies online, is that we need to educate the masses to follow the line, so that way when we conduct the New World Order, it's ready to go, it's ready to be activated. So I just found that to be interesting in terms of
it reminds me of a lot of the way that social media works, and the way that social media companies are run. They know exactly what buttons to press. They know if they flood your timeline with certain things, that especially a massive group of people, they can push people in any direction they want based on doing that. It's it's and all of this does kind of feel like that, like like I said before, it's like they were planting the seeds for what was going to come 50 years later, which, by the way, it's crazy that this movie's 45 years old. It looks incredible. It looks great. It's also Sidney Lumet is, like, I think one of those, like, great overlooked filmmakers, because everything he did was in service of the film that he was making. Like, he didn't do a lot of, like, very invisible hand when he made his films. And I read that apparently they treated the script like scripture, basically. He got, I guess Chayefsky got mad because during the Mad as Hell speech, Howard Beale is supposed to say, "I'm as mad as hell." And I guess, like, Finch was having a hard time because he was having heart issues. So, like, he dropped one of the "as" and just said, "I'm mad as hell," instead of "I'm as mad as hell." And, like, Chayefsky wanted him to do it again, but Lumet was like, "No, he's clearly tired. Like, I think you got the point across." But
that's the most famous line from the movie, of course.
Exactly, yeah. And it's, but apparently also, in addition to that, like, I guess Faye Dunaway was saying that Lumet, like, I guess he blocked everything. They rehearsed everything when they were on set. Like, they didn't waste any time. They all knew what they were going in there to get. And, like, I just really admire that kind of professionalism, because it definitely shows in the movie. And it's one of the reasons why I think it's aged so well.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it was like a 9-week shooting period or a 10-week shooting period. I think that's what I read online.
That would make sense.
They shot the movie in 9 or 10 weeks, 5 days a week, so Monday through Friday, all day, 8 hours a day. That's how they shot the film. Because I guess their budget wasn't as high, and they needed to just they were on a time crunch. And I think the rehearsals definitely helped the movie for sure.
The movie only cost, according to Wikipedia, $3.8 million, which is for '76 is pretty low for a movie like this.
What was the box office take?
It says 23 million, which means it was a sizable hit for sure.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty impressive. It's for 70, especially for a movie that's very. I would think that today's audiences will find this movie boring in a lot of ways. And
I did.
No,
read
you don't agree.
that,
You think people today's audiences will still enjoy a movie like this if they played it in theaters today?
I'll say this: they may find it inaccessible. I don't know if boring. I would say it's boring to a modern audience, but maybe inaccessible and therefore boring. Because one thing that I was thinking about when I watched it is, if I had lived through that period of time, this movie, as great as it is, would seem even greater and make even more sense to me. It was a movie where it is timeless in a sense, but I really yearned to understand the 70s. Like, when I watched this movie, I yearned to understand what it was like to be alive at that time better.
I did read that apparently George Clooney wanted to do some kind of, like, live stage production of this movie, and I guess in the process he was screening it for, like, young people, and he said that they didn't know that it was supposed to be a comedy, that all of the humor was lost on them. Wow. And he ended up, like, scrapping it because he was like, oh, like, we've actually gotten to a point where we just live in this reality now. Right. And so I don't know. Yeah, maybe people would watch it and think it's boring. I don't know.
Well, it definitely was a product of its time. And I think if Paddy Chayefsky was alive today, he would have written a similar movie, but in the with social media as like the forefront, as opposed to network being the news network as the forefront. I think that's what probably he would focus on if he was alive today.
Like TikTok.
There you go.
Just TikTok. Like really going in there and like
social media, whatever, TikTok, whatever, social
TikTok.
media in general. I think that's what he would focus on, and how it has really made us. It's created mini Dianas, really, when you think about it. You know, people who are just so disconnected with reality that they think that life is social media. And I've seen countless examples of social media influencers who, you know, lose either like millions of followers for whatever reason, or they lose sponsorships for whatever reason, and they have to get a real job, and they freak out. They like freak out that at the idea of having to apply at a job, because they no longer have the money coming in from the social media platforms that they relied on and depended on to gain their income. And it's happening just at a faster rate at this point in our history.
I don't feel a lot of sympathy for people in that situation, to be honest. Maybe that makes me mean.
Where's your humanity, James? Where's your humanity?
I know. I've been watching too much Network. I'm too cynical now, but yeah, sorry. No tears from me.
Be like William Holden. Don't be like Faye Dunaway in the movie.
Sure. Very, very true.
Well, go ahead, James.
I was actually I was going to talk about this film's the Academy Awards, but like that doesn't really matter that much. So you go first.
Well, I was going to say, like, at least with the Faye Dunaway character, like, she's a character, she understands television. Right. Like, she understands story. She understands, like, yes, she's living.
Oh, yeah, she sure does.
But she understands the mechanics of it and how it works and how it manipulates. And it's like, so in other words, she's media literate, at least, you know, even though she's shaped by this world of television, but like, you know, that
she understands everything about it. Like she reduces every interaction she has to a TV trope. Right. And she talks about all the various tropes that can then come out of that, and how like even what her relationship she's in is like, it's cliche by TV standards, which is like, it's very like self-referential, and it's just brilliant and very funny.
Yeah, it's funny. The closest character I can think about that has that trait is Abed from the show Community. Did you guys ever watch Community?
I've seen a few episodes. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's the character. He sees everything in terms of.
That's right. He's very self-aware about the tropes on the show. Yeah.
But I guess my point there is like, at least her character understands how it works and how she's manipulating, or how she's been manipulated. And like, most people just don't even endeavor to understand how media is like the structure of media and the effect that it has on us. Which is an extension of rhetoric. People don't bother to know what rhetoric is or how it affects them.
Yeah, absolutely true.
I mean, not a lot of people have time to. I mean, they like, who wants to like analyze? I mean, other than us, who wants to analyze what they watch? They look at that as like, you know, this is what they're doing at the end of the day, and they just want to relax and watch something. Yeah. And I think that might be a good segue to the Oscars, because I think that 76 stands out as being like one of those banner years for movies. And among the nominees, you know, Network was nominated for a ton of Oscars, and it won a few. Taxi Driver was nominated for Best Picture that year. All the President's Men was nominated for Best Picture that year. And the film that won is about as anti-network as you could possibly get. It was Rocky, which was also the biggest hit of that year. I love Rocky. I think Rocky is a classic. Apparently, like, Sidney Lumet was very vocal about being angry that the Oscars picked Rocky over Network. And I mean, I don't know, like, I think it makes sense for that time period. Like, you know, if you look at Jaws, and then you look at, you know, Rocky in 76, Star Wars in 77, like, the public was ready to move on from like Vietnam and Watergate, and and I do think that Network was kind of like, you know, this sort of this last, like, you know, Nashville came out the year before, and it's also dealing with a lot of, you know, some of the same, you know, issues of the time. And yeah, I mean, like, I think the public and Hollywood itself was ready to move on. And then you're going to get a lot of people in Hollywood that are like the Robert Duvall character, a lot of Hackett's coming in and being like, why are we making these this Altman bullshit? Like we should be making this Lucas stuff and Spielberg stuff is making us so much money. Like
Yeah.
And the Oscars like fully supported, going in that direction as opposed to championing films like All the President's Men or Network or Taxi Driver for that matter.
Yeah, which Taxi Driver was really dark, extremely dark. And
it doesn't surprise me that a movie like that wouldn't win. But I mean, it's one of those movies that's like, considered to be one of the great films of all time. So not really your average Oscar movie, but yeah.
Hey, wait, Sean, have you seen Taxi Driver?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ferris is asking, how did you guys meet and become friends? Well, Ferris, I have known James for a lot of years now. I think over 10 years.
It's been a
now.
long.
I met
close
him,
to 15.
Yeah, close to 15. I met him at I think if I remember, at a party, and then I happened to mention, I think, a movie, and then his eyes kind of, oh, you like movies, huh? And then we just started talking about films right after that.
Would you like to talk cinema?
Yeah. So I've known James for a very long time. Sean, I met Sean at my day job, and once again, I think they mentioned to me that he was a cinematographer, so I was like, "Oh, a cinematographer, huh?" So then I started talking to Sean and realized, hey, this guy is very knowledgeable about film as well, and he's passionate about film and cinema just like I am, and that's what started with that. And then one day I just decided, hey, let's just freaking get on YouTube and talk about our love of cinema, and here we are talking about Network, and it's been so far a good run. I've been having a lot of fun. Hopefully it shows for you who are watching out there, and this is all about love of cinema and appreciating the art form, because I think that these days audiences, albeit are hungry for material, I don't think they appreciate just how powerful the medium has been in terms of changing or molding our culture and pushing our culture in various different directions. And a lot of the cinema is not as powerful as it was back then because of social media and television and what have you. Now it's a lot tighter competition for our attention. But here we're just enjoying, old films and kind of reminding people of like, hey, there's some good stuff out there that you guys haven't seen that you guys should give a shot, because you'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
We're definitely showing our ages by being so so pro movie in an age when like young people couldn't possibly care less about like a 2-hour feature film. But I mean, everything you see in modern TV miniseries, like even like internet shows of different kinds, like they are all rooted in the language of cinema. And
absolutely.
And when I first met Sean, you introduced me to just like I think like reawakening my love of classic film and silent film and those movies that like I really was hungry for and wanted to explore when I was really young. And so I mean, like, you're very knowledgeable when it comes to those kind of movies, and talking to you is always like, kind of reawakened that love of classic film, because I get very caught up in contemporary movies and TV, and then just wanting to watch, my favorites like Star Wars and Terminator, and I forget about, these, great classics of cinema. And it's great to talk about them and to get people watching them, because they're great.
Yeah, and I'll say, well, two things. One is shout out to James's wife, Miranda, who's been great. Glue, I think, in all of our friendship. And
it's very true.
Definitely a connective tissue for the three of us, a mutual friends. But the other thing is, like when I started loving movies, I started loving movies as a kid, like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all that stuff. But by the time I was in high school, that was when like video stores were big, and like they opened a Hollywood video store right next to my house, and Hollywood Video was like Blockbuster Video's competitor. You kids can Google it at home.
Ancient days.
I remember.
We had a section.
Remember?
Yeah. Remember? Oh, I remember Hollywood Video. So they had a section called Classics at Hollywood Video, and that's why I preferred it to Blockbuster, because they had a whole classics shelf. And I just started grabbing stuff because I was like, I like movies. I want to see these old movies with like James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. And for some reason, the Hollywood Video, like, that's kind of all they had is Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney movies, which was great, like, because those guys are great and their movies are great. So I started getting obsessed with Bogart and Cagney and film noir, and like kind of went back to the 40s and then even the late 30s. And then lately I've been involved in this silent movie stuff, and kind of, I basically got interested in movies and I kept going back and back and back until I couldn't go back any further. And I'm just now stuck in the silent period. But what was that comment you just threw up, Julius?
This one here.
Little does Ferris know. We are within a 10-mile radius of each other right now.
Yeah. But obviously, you know why we're doing this now, Ferris, because of the COVID-19 situation. So that'd be cool, actually, if we could do one room and kind of do like a Joe Rogan type of deal where we all are in the same room and showing clips and whatnot. But this is fine. This works. It's fine.
Yeah,
this works. It does. Yeah.
We can stay. We can stay in our home, and then you don't have to worry about driving to someone's house and doing the whole spiel, unless you want to give up some money, and pay us to do it. Then, well, of course,
Ferris. If you have like 1 million friends you can tell about this channel, then we'll definitely take it to the next level.
I was just thinking it'd be really funny if we were actually recording in like the same house, but we were just in 3 different rooms.
Yeah,
because we're almost close enough where that could be possible.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, speaking of what you were talking about, silent movies, that'll be a good segue to promote what you the John Ford silent film that you're gonna show for your what's it called?
For anyone watching, if you enjoy this show, I host another show called Retro Format Live, and we show silent movies, and then I do a Q&A sometimes afterward with like an expert or someone connected to the silent movie era. And this coming Monday, March 22nd, we're doing John Ford's, this is the channel. It's youtube.com/retroformat silent films. And you can see our past shows there. But this coming Monday, the 22nd, not this Monday, but the following Monday, we're doing John Ford's The Iron Horse, which is great director John Ford, actually directed a lot of movies in the silent period as well. It's a silent movie directed by John Ford. And then after the film, I'll be interviewing Joseph McBride, the author of 2 authoritative biographies on John Ford, and a film historian and professor up in San Francisco, professor of film. So anyway, check out Retro Format. It's a nonprofit and it's free, so check it out.
Let's check out the little minute preview here.
We're not going to get shut down, right?
No.
Most of the films are in the public domain.
Awesome.
Well, who knows? This is from our event back in January of 2020, our sold out show at the Hollywood Legion Theater in Hollywood. And before the pandemic, we were doing all of our shows in person, always on film, always with live musical accompaniment. And since COVID-19 started, we've started doing virtual or digital shows on Facebook Live and on YouTube, also YouTube Live. So check it out, guys.
Was I hallucinating, or did I just see Alexander Payne in there?
You did. He's
okay.
You provided me a chance to brag. I serve on the board of directors with Mr. Payne.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Wow, that's really cool.
That's cool. That is cool.
And
so you have it,
I'll-
guys. Silent films is I'll admit it took me a while to get accustomed to silent films because I was born way after that time, so it
Few
was
years.
hard for me to watch, the piano playing and no sound effects, no sound, nothing, just the piano and the imagery. But after a while, like I think it was when I saw Buster Keaton's The Cameraman is when I finally like, oh, okay, this is great. This is freaking fantastic stuff. And then I was able to watch D.W. Griffith's Intolerance and Birth of a Nation, and also Charlie Chaplin movies and other famous silent films. And it's like I said, it takes some accustoming to get used to it. But once you get used to it and you start appreciating it, then it becomes a treat for sure. At least for me, anyway.
Yeah, no, when you first watch a silent movie for the first time, it takes a little getting used to if you're not used to watching movies that way. It's a totally different way of watching movies. There's no dialogue there's no sound or dialogue to bring you through sort of, if you turn your attention away from it for a moment, you can still hear the dialogue, that kind of thing. Right. You really have to watch silent movies. You have to pay attention to them. But that's what I love about them, is they're purely visual. The great silent filmmakers would minimize the use of intertitle cards, which are the cards between scenes that show the dialogue lines or the exposition. The great filmmakers like Buster Keaton would minimize those, try to get them as few as possible so that they could just tell the story completely visually. So in that way, silent film, I mean, I learn a lot as a filmmaker from silent movies all the time of just how to communicate things visually and not use or not rely too much on sound or exposition to get your point across. It is a visual medium.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, also the other thing about silent films that I think is lost on people is that they don't realize just how painstaking it is to just make a film, period, but also to make a film back then when you got a box and you're cranking it and the camera's huge and heavy, but also that these movies were composed for movie palaces. And, thousands of people would get together in a room and like there would be this huge screen. And it was a very immersive experience, especially when you didn't have anything else to compare it to. You didn't have, talkies, to compare it to. You just had this one new medium.
Yeah, and we try to recreate the experience of the silent film movie-going experience, which is live music, usually piano, sometimes organ score. You mentioned seeing things on a big screen, and like that was, speaking of John Ford and the silent movie show we have coming up, that was how that's what sold me on John Ford, was that I would always like, Ford, I don't really get it. I mean, yeah, I like Westerns and everything. But when I saw, I was at the University of Miami and I saw one of his films on the big screen for the first time. It was like the opening shot of Fort Apache or She Wore a Yellow Ribbon or one of those movies. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, the horses and the stagecoach and everything going like, so fast, and the camera's moving with it, and it's Monument Valley and it's on the big screen. It just looks so impressive. And I just thought, man, like these people made movies for this screen,
It's incredible when you see, like, because I had that experience watching Vertigo on the big screen, and that's already one of my favorite films. But to see a movie like that, the way it was composed for, and those colors on a big screen was just like, it completely blew my mind. And you really have an understanding at that point, like, oh, this is what this was kind of meant for, was this kind of experience, not to watch it on my iPad.
Well, and all I have to say, not to get too technical or geek out too much, but a lot of people think like, they'll be like, oh, I saw this old movie, but it was in HD. How did they up-res it? How did they make it into HD? And it's like, well, movies filmed even 100 years ago. Like, film is such a high fidelity format. It's not that these original movies weren't in quote HD. They were shot in film, and they were, just like the early photographs that you see that are so stark and clear, that are shot on large format cameras. Yeah. It's just that they age, and sometimes they get transferred onto video and then retransferred, et cetera, et cetera. But when you can see a film that's been scanned from an original print or negative, that's restored, like on a Blu-ray, or you go to the movie theater and see it. It's really amazing. Film is just an amazing technological format.
Absolutely. And it always depends on the kind of filmmaker you have too. Like for instance, I could think like 2001: Space Odyssey. You watch that in the HD television, you're like, this does not look dated or aged. And is this CGI? Is this CGI? I would imagine a new viewer watching 2001: Space Odyssey on an HD television set today would look at it and be like, wow, is this CGI or is this what is this? And it's like, no, it's just miniatures, man. Miniatures and a keen eye to capture
camera effects.
Camera effects, exactly. Which is
my favorite story about 2001 is the floating pin.
Right.
And the way they did that, there's that scene, he's in the spaceship, he's going to the moon, there's a pin floating in the air. And the way they did that was there was just a clear pane, a giant pane of glass that they literally stuck the pin to, and then moved the glass in such a way that it looked like it was floating. And then the actor had to grab the pin out of, from the glass as if she were plucking it from the air. And it just looks perfect. And think about that movie shot on 70 millimeter, which is a large film format, put on a huge screen. That effect has to be flawless and sell on a 70-foot widescreen.
Right. Yeah.
And it does.
It's funny because that story about that pen, I think that there was this like misconception because you couldn't just like run and watch the movie on video after the movie came out. But like, I think when people heard about that effect, there was this understanding that if you listened really closely, you could hear like her nails clink on the glass, which is like, obviously you don't really know how movies work if you think that, because like they probably weren't shooting sound when they did that.
Right.
So, but I do think that's kind of like an interesting thing when you hear like, oh, that's how they did that. Like maybe I can hear like the clink of the glass and like, I don't know. But I've
dealing with Stanley Kubrick. I doubt that. I highly doubt that.
Yeah.
He would have fired her and got some. Yeah, seriously, he would have had her do it 100 times.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, wow, we should probably choose that movie one day, 2001: Space Odyssey. That's a very like another movie you could unpack and talk for hours at a time. And
did you see Did you see when they re-released it for the 50th when Nolan did the what did he call it? The like unspecial edition of the movie where it's
unspecial edition.
Or I can't remember exactly, but the idea was he went in with like the original tools and he made it look exactly the way it looked in 1968. He didn't use any of like the modern technology to try to I see. And so I saw it in IMAX. I saw it at the Cinerama Dome. I saw it in digital. I saw it in 70 millimeter. I went and saw it 4 times in 2018, and it was just a reminder of why it's my all-time favorite movie. So,
well, the wonderful thing about that was that they struck new prints, and and now one wonderful thing was that they struck brand new prints from the restored. I don't know all the technical side of it, but it's great that they did that because it's. Now all those prints there's more prints of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right.
And it's now better preserved for that reason.
Absolutely.
That's right. The audio was a big deal too, because in a theater, you realize just how piercing so much of the audio is. Like there were moments where I did think my head was going to explode. It's totally worth it. It was amazing. If I would go see it every day if I could.
I love that moment in that movie, speaking of that, where they're approaching the monolith on the moon, and the score there, it's like the voices, and they're going, ooh.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's great.
And then the piercing alarm goes off when they try to take a picture of the monolith, and the monolith is like, no pictures, and then it like, it's just great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, we gotta watch that one day. In the future episode. So I think that pretty much sums it up, guys. I think we've talked about Network enough, and sang its praises. And if you guys have not seen Network, we highly recommend it. Let's do our rating out of 1 through 10. What would you rate Network do 1, 2, 3. Sean, let's start with you. What would you rate it?
I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10.
Wow, higher than I thought.
Why a 9? 1 out of 10? Is it because of the some of the scenes that bothered you? Was that the reason why you gave it a 9?
I'm kind of with James on his first viewing. Like, I thought there was some tone. I felt there were tonal issues, but I probably would feel different on a subsequent viewing. It is over the top. My dear brother said they should have called this movie Over the Top instead of
then people would have been expecting a
Stallone
movie.
I know. Yeah. So excuse me, my voice. Yeah. So for that reason, the performances, the script, it was just a little bit turned up to 11, too much for me sometimes. But yeah, great movie. Probably will watch the movie again in a couple of years or several years.
James, what will be your rating?
Well, I feel like it's getting pretty boring because I feel like I'm giving out like 10s like they're hotcakes on every single movie we pick.
We don't review bad movies here. That's why.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 10.5. So I'll shake things up. You know.
Man,
no, it's a 10.
It's up right there.
It's a 10 for me for sure.
Yeah, same for me. 10 because like I said, this was the first movie where I was able to appreciate the screenplay. I've seen other movies where I appreciate the screenplay itself, but this was the one that was like, wow, this writer must have taken this writer a long time to write it. And of course, I found out later that it took him a year to write a screenplay, which is, I think, the best way to approach writing a solid screenplay, which is you gotta take your time and let it fester, let it grow, let it get it out as slowly as possible, so you can be careful with not, like you mentioned, Sean, being over the top, even though there are some scenes that are a little over the top, I will admit. But I think it's a good over the top, I guess, if you want.
Well, it's very farcical,
Yes, it is a satire after all. It is a satire after all.
And you know what? Even like it's funny because and maybe Sean, you'll have this experience when you revisit it at some point. I really felt like I was taking it to task as a young person watching it. And I remember I also was doing some reading, and like apparently Pauline Kael did not like this film when it came out for a lot of the reasons that like we were talking about. Like she felt like it was just monologue heavy, it was too on the nose. But for whatever reason, watching it now, I was just happy that it went there. Like even the parts that felt over the top, I was like, I'm just so used to movies being so neutered now, and like having to like watch out for what they say, and be careful, it's going to play in China, so we have to cut this out and do this. Like, and like this was back when like I don't know, like movies had had balls, I guess.
It did. It did.
Yeah.
It did, because you didn't have to worry about foreign markets. You didn't have to worry about
exactly. Yeah.
And you just have to worry about the American domestic markets. And nowadays, like you mentioned, now people are worried about, we don't want to offend the Chinese, we don't want to offend the Indians, we don't want to offend this crowd, that crowd. And it's like, okay, well then, Hollywood, you're gonna have to, figure out a way to make safe movies, because in this country we like to be challenged. I can't speak for all Americans, but me personally, like for instance, when we watched Silence, that was a very challenging movie.
Yeah.
But it was good to watch a movie like that, because that's the whole point of American cinema, is to challenge you, is to make you look at something that may be uncomfortable, but it's good fodder for food for thought, right? Food for thought to sit there and think about, like, wow, I had no idea that, that Christians went to Japan and try to, convert the Japanese into Christians, but yet it backfired. That kind of stuff. We could talk about that. You can watch the previous episode, guys, if you guys have not seen that episode where we discussed the science. But that's what my point is, that's why now these days, which is probably why I there's a lot of dislike for me, or a lot of hate towards Hollywood, is because they've kind of cucked, I guess, under pressure to just Fred Hackett, right? I got to make that money. I don't care how good the movie is. I just we want those box office numbers to be high, and so we don't care about changing the movie.
I think that's definitely the distinction to make, though, is because, like, cultural insensitivity is not what we're talking about. It's more about them neutering the movie so they can play in every country and not wanting to challenge any kind of a status quo. And like the 70s were all about challenging the status quo. And that doesn't really exist anymore, at least in like on that level, making movies that will like, play in a mainstream, capacity.
Yeah. And yeah, I was going to say, like, it's nice to have art. A country needs art that's distinctly of that country. It doesn't mean we can't have global art also, but we need art that's distinctive to our culture that, like Julius was saying, will challenge us. And yeah, it's funny because I really enjoy like global blockbuster stupid movies, like
same.
Like they're very enjoyable, but they almost have the guilty pleasure for me of like watching like a Hong Kong action movie or something where I'm not really feeling connected to any political commentary or anything. It's just, I unplug my brain and I enjoy this. But yeah, we need movies like this to, or like Silence, to actually say something about culture and religion or whatever it is.
Maybe I could understand the 70s were a time where those movies were making the most money, which is the reason why studios were greenlighting them, because they were making the money. But then when the blockbuster came, that's when they shifted their gears and they started producing more of the blockbuster films. I'm more in the 21st century, 2021, as we are 20 years into the 21st century. I feel that there should be a balance of everything. Let's have our blockbusters, sure, absolutely, let's do it. But at the same time, hey, let's every once in a while, Hollywood or production companies or whoever is out there, produce some thought-provoking movies, not grandstanding films, but something that like I said, challenges our way of thinking or challenges the culture or cultural norms or what have you. And a good balance, I think, a good diet of cinema would do a lot of good for our national culture and our local cultures in America, not just America, but the world as well.
In this movie, nobody sort of gets out unscathed. Everyone's sort of just portrayed as cynical and money grubbing, and
which is the world of television. It's the truth. Patty Chayefsky, like we talked about earlier, he was part of that world for a long time, and he got to see firsthand just how greedy and cutthroat these executives can be if they push it. If they really want to get something that they want on air, and it's reality veiled as satire, as I call Network.
Yeah.
And I feel that we don't have that much. We don't have many filmmakers and artists today that do that. Sunset Boulevard, for instance, was almost the same deal. It was what was the director's name again? I forget.
Billy
Wilder.
Billy Wilder, seeing firsthand how all these Hollywood producers and directors treat fading stars, and he made a movie about it, and it pissed off a lot of people in Hollywood. But it was like, hey man, like I'm just writing what I know, right? As the trope goes, I write what I know, and I feel that these days they don't do that as often because either they're insecure and they don't want anyone to know about their insecurity, or they're just not enough bold artists who are willing to take it there to kind of lift the veil a little bit behind the scenes of what goes on in not just Hollywood, any industry that's big and and known throughout the country and throughout the world, like television or news, social media, that kind of thing. I think the last movie that did that a little bit was The Social Network, which is interesting that it had the same name. It kind of gave not the backstory, but a glimpse of how Facebook was created and how it was kind of on a questionable approach as to how
that's really funny.
Create that.
It's really funny that you mentioned that, because that's actually I wanted us to do that movie next because it has network in the title. And
you want to do it?
I found this quote, and this is why I thought it would be perfect. Aaron Sorkin said of Network, no predictor of the future, not even Orwell, has ever been as right as Chayefsky was when he wrote Network. And he said that Chayefsky's script is one of his biggest influences. So
I believe it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it in The West Wing. You can see it in anything that Aaron
for
Sorkin
sure.
has done. He's definitely channeling Shaefsky, and I can't say I blame him because Shaefsky, for me, is also a big influence on how I would like to write screenplays if I ever get a chance to write a screenplay. Maybe not that level because obviously, not everyone can be a Shaefsky, just like not everyone can be a Tarantino or a David Mamet, but something I would like to. That would be the goalpost for me. Is like I gotta try to reach that level of Shaefsky if I ever do get a chance to write a screenplay for a film.
I wish more writers would think that way. I mean, I felt that way watching this movie. I was like, there are a few examples of films that do break through and really expose a lot of like how this stuff works. And I just I just wish more filmmakers were willing to go there. And but I guess it's risky territory, So
it is because Hollywood's run by a bunch of Fred Hackett's.
Very true. Very true.
You can't really have many people like Shaefsky today. Because I would imagine Shaefsky would be hard for him if he was alive today to make a movie like Network if he wanted.
Oh yeah,
it's very, very difficult. But I think Social Network probably comes close. Now that I think about it,
I think so too.
Modern day network. So
I think we should do it, guys.
I don't know, guys. Well, tiny pushback.
Okay.
I thought we should do a comedy next time.
Social Network is very funny.
Social Network is pretty funny. Have you seen Social Network?
It's a very funny film.
Yeah.
You have? Okay, you have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to doing it, but maybe after that we could do like
full-blown comedy.
Okay, you know what? Let's agree to it now. We'll watch Social Network for next week's show, and then after that, Sean, since you requested it, you get to choose the comedy film we could watch. So how about that?
Hell yeah.
Okay, I already have two in mind that I might.
All right, cool. Then you have plenty of time to think about it because that'll be in 2 weeks from now. We'll have our comedy show. Hopefully, well, no, I'm not saying hopefully. I know it's going to be a good choice.
I'm going to pick the movie right now.
Huh?
I'm going to pick the movie right now. Can I do that?
Oh,
do it.
What is it?
Hudsucker Proxy.
Yes.
Hudsucker Proxy. All right.
I've been looking for an excuse to watch that movie. I'm so happy. That's great.
You can't go wrong with that's a Coen Brothers film, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's what that.
One of their silliest.
Paul Newman, right? Paul Newman, Tim
Robbins. Yeah. Jennifer Jason.
One of the most underrated films maybe ever made.
I agree. I can't wait for that. I haven't seen it in a few years, but I'm going to look forward to watching it again. It's going to be great.
They made before Fargo, and actually it was a very expensive film to make, and it was a box office failure. And after they made it, they said, "Okay, let's just make something small." Wild About 88 says, "Hey, you know what? Maybe come Christmas time, we will do Home Alone." It's a Mad World. That's also.
I've never seen that film, but I want to watch it. I would love to do that one day.
Buster Keaton has a cameo, so it's worth watching just for that.
That's right.
But so anyway, they made Fargo right after that, thinking we'll go small. We'll make a movie that's kind of smaller and nobody will care about it, but at least the stakes will be low. And then that was the one that got them all the Oscar nominations and made William H. Macy a household name and all that stuff.
All right. Well, I'm excited. So, all right, guys, you've heard it here. Next week, we'll be doing The Social Network. That's directed by David Fincher and written by Aaron Sorkin, which is a fantastic film. And, look at this. It's free on you. Wait, what's free on YouTube right now? Ferris, is it the Mad World or the Hudsucker Proxy? Which one is it? And the week after that, it will be Hudsucker Proxy, written and directed by the Coen Brothers, and starring Paul Newman and Tim Robbins, which is also a classic. When I saw that movie for the first time, I was about, I think, 12 years old, and I remember thinking, this is a weird movie, but oddly funny, though. I find it funny. I have no idea what's going on, but it's fun. Oh, okay. It's a Mad World that's free on YouTube. So there you go, James. If you want to watch it, it's free on YouTube.
Well, okay. I nerd corner really quick. The reason why I haven't watched it yet is because I want to get my hands on the Criterion version. Because the thing that fascinates me about that movie is that it's like one of the few films shot in 70 millimeter, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it was shot in like an ultra widescreen format. It's like 3 hours long. Like, sounds epic. I want to make sure like I'm seeing it in the best presentation possible.
Yeah,
right, there you go. There you go.
I've only seen it once, but it is an interesting movie in that respect. How, it's a comedy, but it's kind of like an epic comedy.
An epic epic comedy. Wow, you don't see many of those these days.
Or I'll say it endeavors to be an epic comedy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, great. So we got our 2 movies picked out for the next 2 weeks, which is awesome. I can't wait. Is there any last thoughts you have on the movie or anything else before we call it a night?
I want everybody watching out there to get up.
Oh, come on, man. You should have followed through, Sean. You should have followed through, man. James, any last words before we call it a night?
I don't know. I think Sean got it, to be honest. So I've got nothing else.
I want you to go where you would go.
All right. Well, I don't have any last thoughts either. So again, if you guys have not seen Network, watch it this weekend if you have a chance to. There is a sex scene in it, so make sure little kiddies, if you have little kids, do not watch it with them, because there is some pretty hardcore scenes, not hardcore scenes, but there's some not for safe children scenes in the movie.
Definitely one of the most awkward of sex scenes, for sure. Would absolutely scar any child, for sure.
I agree, yes. Wait, before we go, Ferris is asking, any thoughts on doing a director series review format?
I had an idea along those lines of doing, like, picking a director and then doing a series of, like, picking 3 movies, for instance. So we could try it sometime, maybe in the future.
Absolutely.
I'd want to start with, like, the masters, people who had really
absolutely
filmographies.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, maybe.
That's a given. I think that's a given. We would have to start with the masters, because if it wasn't for the masters, we wouldn't have what we have today in terms of filmmaking. All right. I think that pretty much sums it up. So I would like to remind everyone that the reason why this show was streamed on the Julius Freeman Comics was because the Talking Cinema channel is up and running now, but I didn't get a chance to the way the StreamYard works is that I have to allow YouTube permission to allow StreamYard to stream, and it takes about 48 hours. And I was hoping today would be the day, but it's going to be approved by tomorrow. So next Friday I will be live streaming from this channel and the new channel, so that way if you're still watching us from this channel, you can still watch the show. But after that week, it's going to be straight on the Talking Cinema channel from here on out going forward. So during next week, it'll be on both channels, but the week after that, it'll just be on the Talking Cinema channel. So make sure you subscribe to that channel. Make sure you hit the like button. Helps with the algorithms. Leave a comment. Hit the notification bell on the Talking Cinema channel, so that way you'll be notified once we go live, or for any new videos that will be produced, which will be coming in the future. And yeah, guys, that's pretty much sums up for tonight's show. And I would like to start a tradition. Hopefully it sticks, but I'm not sure. I want to end the show with something that I find enjoyable. And this past week, I was going down memory lane, and I was thinking about all the old comedians that I grew up watching. Even though, oddly enough, I shouldn't be watching these comedians, considering that they were not safe for children. But I had a very oh, Sean, you still here?
He's not interested.
Oh, there he is. And I found this old skit of a stand-up comedian named Sam Kinison, who was one of my favorites growing up as a kid because he was loud, he was obnoxious, which was right up my alley because he almost reminded me of my stepdad. My stepdad was a very loud and obnoxious guy. So seeing someone like him on TV going, oh, wow, so he's not the only one who does that. So Sam Kinison was someone that I liked, I enjoyed. And I wanted to share this with all of you because it brought me a lot of joy and a lot of laughter this week. Because please don't start crying, Julius. No, never, Ferris. Maybe
Julius is a robot, so that's not possible.
Yeah, that's not possible. I'm a clone.
He's basically Faye Dunaway in Network.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't cry.
I don't know how to cry, Ferris. I don't know how to cry. It's just it doesn't compute. It doesn't compute in my head.
Doesn't know how to love.
Doesn't know how to love. I was raised by Bugs Bunny, like her. So I wanted to share this with you guys. It's an old skit from Johnny Carson's The Tonight Show, which in my opinion is the best Tonight Show of all. Like better than Jay Leno, better than what we have. The other idiot that's hosting it now, I don't forget his name. I don't care. It's
Hey, Conan O'Brien hosts The Tonight Show. I gotta put a shout out for Conan.
And I was sad that they got rid of him, because I was hoping he would remain the Tonight Show host, but of course that whole fiasco. But that's another topic.
We hit the hard hitting controversies on this show. We just do it 10 years late. That's how.
Yeah, exactly.
We do it at the very end of the show. We wait till the very end to do it,
and then we go. Okay, bye.
So I wanted to share this with you guys, and then we'll go off there. So with that said, good night. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. Please join us next week as we will be discussing. Wow, I had a brain fart. The Social Network by David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin. So with that said, guys, have a good night and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Good night.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me too?
Julius, if you're muted, we can't hear Sam.
And called you sweetheart. Do the chairs in your parlor seem empty and bare? Do you gaze at your doorstep and picture me there? Is your heart filled with pain? Shall I go back again? Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight? You know, I wonder if you're lonesome tonight. I wonder a lot of things. Like, are you human? How do you live with yourself? Are you a reptile with a nice hairdo? You snaky tramp! You lied to me! You told me you love me, you never loved me! You said forever, remember that one? Oh, there's a joke, forever! Yeah, forever, honey! Yeah, what does forever mean to you? Till another guy comes into your life with more money and a better car. Oh, I'm sorry, we better break up. I'm not growing as a person. We need to get away from each other. Oh, that was a great idea. Yeah, let's break up, honey. Did you grow any? Are you any taller? I'll tell you what you learned. You learned how to break my heart. But I'd rather go on here in your lives. Tell you want to look at you. That's how sick I am. Well, I'm standing here. The stage is bare. Oh, I can't say it. You know what you did. You know what you did. You were wrong. Say it, you stupid, stubborn pig. I was wrong. No. Your heart filled with pain. Shall I go back again? Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight? I hope you